Hello, my name is Davis Norris, and this is my final presentation on the men who built America. Over the whole series, we saw many different leaders and the skills they used to become successful entrepreneurs, and we got to see several of the skills they used that we discussed in the class. From chapter 1, Cornelius Vanderbilt, he immediately showed signs of a great leader. He was an effective manager, and he had a belief that transportation would change from shipping to railroads and would connect the whole country. He applied the 4 management functions. He planned and made a decision that he would change his business and invest into the railroads. He organized by selling his ships, and he led by uprooting his whole business and building railroads and then expanding and building the United States rail. Then he was controlling by rapidly expanding his business. Chapter 2, he showed his managerial ethics by controlling. He wanted to control all of the rail lines into New York City, and the way he did this was he closed the Albany Bridge. When he did so, he essentially bankrupted the other railroads, and then when their stocks plummeted, he bought them all and therefore controlled all the railroads into New York City. Is this ethical? Today, no, and it showed his beliefs. He improved his general environment by creating a central hub for his rail network in New York City. He called it the Grand Central Depot, and with this, he connected the Harlem, the Hudson, and the Central Rail lines. In chapter 3, Vanderbilt used the planning process. He wanted to connect New York to Chicago, and the way to do this was he needed the Erie line. And to obtain the Erie line, he would need to invest a lot of money into the Erie Railroad. So he sent his agents to go and buy stocks. However, 2 men had their own strategy to take from Vanderbilt, and they performed an act called watering down stock, which is illegal today. But they printed hundreds of thousands or just thousands of stocks, therefore diminishing the value of each one. So he would need to continue to buy thousands in order to get a majority. Then a new man came into play, John D. Rockefeller. He was raised from nothing, and he saw an opportunity in the oil industry. However, instead of drilling for oil, which he thought was a big gamble, he wanted to refine oil and turn it into kerosene. So Rockefeller used the decision-making process by recognizing the options for drilling versus refining, and then he chose that a wise choice would be to refine it, and he would make millions off of it. He also followed the steps in the rational decision-making by he defined the issue with before his time, kerosene was dangerous and unpredictable, and the public feared it. And in order for him to in order for the public to get confidence in his kerosene, he had to demonstrate it. And he created a standard for all oil throughout his business, known as Standard Oil. And then people ended up trusting it. In chapter 5, Rockefeller wanted to be a rich entrepreneur. And so he planned, he organized, and he took many risks in order to become the leader of his industry. And he owned a monopoly. So he began examining different business strategies. When the railroads came together, Vanderbilt and Tom Scott came together to jack up prices for Rockefeller, and this led him to oil pipelines when he wanted to completely destroy the railroads at that point. His role in society, he was lighting every home from coast to coast with kerosene, so he thought he held immense power and grace. In chapter 6, several situational factors affected how Rockefeller conducted business. The technology of his time, it allowed him to build oil pipelines. The environment, anyone that was wealthy wanted to take from his wealth and wanted anything that he had. The size of his business was immense. Again, he owned a monopoly, and he owned 90%, I believe, of all the oil in North America. And so he could coordinate activities however he wanted. At the time, there were no rules or regulations, so he could bankrupt other companies. He could run his business however he wanted to. Chapter 7, Tom Scott conducted a huge organizational change. He wanted in on the oil industry because he saw how profitable it was. Before this, he was just in the railroad industry. So he changed his business into oil, and Rockefeller